Hey, what's going on, gang? Nate on the Stone here. Welcome back to my channel. Did you know that 2 plus 2 does not always equal 4 anymore? That might actually floor you. You would think that a discovery of that magnitude would have made the front pages of at least some of the newspapers that are still in print, or at the very least earn a minute's worth of airtime on the nightly news at some point in the last couple of months. It didn't. But that discovery was still made, at least according to our elitists. In this case, the ball started rolling with a Twitter thread from Karim Kar, a PhD student from Harvard. Okay, now this makes sense. Which sought to explain that under certain circumstances, 2 plus 2 could equal 5. Because saying that 2 plus 2 equals 4 and only 4 was, as he put it, a very unsatisfactory way of looking at the world. In fact, Karim Kar said that saying 2 plus 2 equals 4 and only 4 is downright Orwellian because it locks down free debate and free thinking. 2020, the year that made the multiplication table room 101. In a sign of the times, this idea was not laughed at and then chucked away into the garbage bin, but actually spread like wildfire. Twitter users made the argument in all sincerity that it all depends on how you define the troublesome plus sign between the two 2's. Or they made examples like this. Imagine that there are 2 factories, each of them with 2.5 parts of a machine. And if you put the 2 factories together, you literally get 2 plus 2 equals 5. Popular Mechanics even wrote a whole piece about Carr's original thread and proclaimed him to be a Delphic oracle who had spoken nothing but the truth. Before we go on, let me make one thing clear before people start hammering away at the comments section. It is true that in some forms of mathematics, numbers and symbols do not act in the same way that we were taught in grade school. For example, in modular math, 13 mod 5 equals 3. That actually is true. So the Twitter statsy were right, and 2 plus 2 can equal 5, right? Well, not exactly. In the modular example that I just gave, what's actually being said is 13 divided by 5 equals 2 with a remainder of 3. 13 mod 5 equals 3 in modular mathematics because modular math is interested specifically in remainders, and as such, the numbers and the symbols used in it operate under different rules and have different meanings than the rules and meanings that we learned in grade school for basic math. Think of it like this. In basic math, numbers and symbols, like the plus and the minus sign, operate under a specific set of rules. But in other forms of mathematics, like in modular math, there's a different set of rules that they abide by. It's like a group of friends going from playing football to playing baseball. It's this fact, different branches and types of mathematics operating by different rules, that critical theorists are taking advantage of. As sociologist James Lindsay explained, insisting that 2 plus 2 equals 5 is part of the critical theorist's plan of making math completely subjective. Using the cover of these other forms of mathematics and deliberately not explaining to the general public the different rules by which these different forms of math operate, critical theorists are attacking the objectivity of mathematics, sowing doubt into the minds of people that 2 plus 2 always and everywhere equals 4. And this is the critical point, gang, this uncertainty is the actual end goal of the critical theorists. Because once that doubt is sown into people's minds, the critical theorists can swoop in and entirely change not only how math operates, but the goals of mathematics itself. It used to be that mathematics was just another way by which we could see and understand the world, specifically in this case, numerical relations. Critical theorists, on the other hand, want to weaponize it so that it can be used to fight for social justice. For example, the point was made on Twitter that saying 2 plus 2 equals 5 is actually a challenge to classical understanding and classical knowledge. A challenge that has to take place because mathematics, like of course everything else in the world, is riddled with white supremacy and is simply another system by which white supremacy maintains its grasp on the rest of the world. Oh, and if you think that it's just nameless Twitter users who are pushing this agenda, think again. The organization Math Values released an official statement which said that since humans create mathematics, Instead of just discovering mathematics, the field itself is riddled with human bias. And since, of course, white supremacy is the most pervasive and most evil of all human biases, mathematics is riddled with white supremacy and therefore ipso facto is in and of itself guilty of maintaining and sustaining white supremacy. What's happening here isn't just another example of political correctness or campus insanity. It's a full-out attack on knowledge. Mathematics, like the rest of the hard sciences, such as chemistry, astronomy, biology, physics, is purely objective. Now, this doesn't mean that certain practitioners of mathematics don't hold biases, personal or professional. Many of them, I'm sure, do. But mathematics, in and of itself, as a discipline, is purely objective. And the reason for that is because the laws of mathematics and the laws of the natural world are what they are. They don't take or see color, sex, gender, or any other category, real or imagined, in the human race into consideration. 2 + 2 = 4 is just as valid and objectively true in white as Antarctica, Horton, Kansas, and black as space, Uganda, Africa. Moreover, 2 + 2 = 4 does not oppress anyone, white or black. Physics doesn't discriminate between different levels of melanin. To it, physical bodies are physical bodies, and therefore are equally subject to gravity, friction, and all the other natural forces. In fact, acknowledging and expanding our knowledge in these fields, in any fields for that matter, actually enhances people, regardless of their color, regardless of where we are, not only because it expands our knowledge about the natural world itself, but also because it allows us to better harness those natural forces for our betterment and for our own improvement. Replacing genuine, honest-to-God knowledge with wokeness does nothing but harm everyone who comes into contact with it, because we've replaced knowledge with ideology. And this war on knowledge isn't just in mathematics or just even in the hard sciences. History, for example, has been completely taken over by the 1619 Project mentality, which, according to Project Brain Trust Nicole Hannah-Jones, replaces objectivity with narrative. In the realm of literature, leftists have proposed in all seriousness that the Western canon be completely abolished. No more Homer, Shakespeare, Dante, or Hemingway. Studying these men, reading their works, soaking in their language, their ideas, and their metaphors does nothing but oppress minority people of color. Again and again and again, across every single field, the goal is the same: cut down objectivity so that our elitists can rewrite reality. I could, in all honesty, wrap up the video right there, but that would leave a primordial question unanswered. Why is this happening? Why is critical theory actually making the headway that it is? Why are people accepting it? The root answer to that question is this: we have severed reason from faith. Now stay with me, gang. I promise that it will make sense once we reach the end of the video. Today, thanks to modern and postmodern philosophers and just thinkers in general, we actively think, or subconsciously just accept by osmosis, that faith and reason are diametrically opposed to each other. In this setup, reason is what we rationally can conclude from hard data points gathered by sensory perception and research, while faith is more about what we feel and what we choose to believe in, whether there's actually any evidence for it or not. Not to put too fine a point on this, but this idea is wrong! According to the master philosopher himself, Thomas Aquinas, faith is not simply the blind acceptance of doctrine simply because it's doctrine, but is actually an act of the intellect itself, which has as its object objective truth. In fact, faith has both a subjective and an objective component to it. On the subjective side, it is an individual person's assent to believe in what he cannot see. And on the objective side, faith is divided into what Aquinas called preambles of faith and articles of faith. The preambles of faith are truths that can also be known through philosophical reasoning. For example, the existence of God. Articles of faith, however, are what cannot be known through human reason alone, but have to be accepted by divine revelation or the testimony of others. For Christians, an example of this would be the mystery of the Trinity. Now, we can't dive too deep into the Thomistic understanding of faith, but the long and the short of it is this. Though faith is not the same thing as reason, in fact, Aquinas says that what is true in faith does not necessarily have to be true or conclusive in philosophy, although the reverse of that is not true, it is not the contradiction of reason. Faith and reason are like two pieces of rope intertwined together to make each one stronger. And honestly, when you sit down and think about it, this is the only explanation that actually makes sense. Both faith and reason are only possible in humanity because both come from Logos, that spark that allows each and every one of us not only to reason and to rationalize, but also to empathize and imagine, as we have talked about before here on the channel. So just as reason and imagination are not naturally opposed to each other, neither are reason and faith. They all come from the same wellspring. It's when they're separated from each other that everything starts going to hell, because when you actually divorce faith from reason, both begin to become perverted. Faith severed from reason dissolves into superstition and rank sentimentalism, becoming an exercise in doing what makes you feel good at the moment, which is actually the cornerstone of moral therapeutic deism. It also has the potential of dissolving into a cult, where the personhood of the individual is tossed to the wayside. Faith severed from reason, for example, could conclude that since conversion is a good thing, any sort of conversion will do, even conversion brought about by the threat of death. Reason separated from faith, however, is no better off. Without the grounding and widening vision that faith provides, reason can go to some very scary places very, very quickly. For example, the 18th century British idealist philosopher George Berkeley honestly and genuinely argued that matter does not exist in the world. Instead, everything that we experience through our five senses, everything that we see, hear, smell, touch, is nothing but projections of our mind. It sounds crazy because it is crazy, but his philosophy, by its own internal logic, is actually 100% reasonable. Even worse, reason divorced from faith loses all of its moral clarity and assurances. Without faith, we can still know right from wrong, but then the question becomes, why should we do right instead of wrong? Why should we help those who are less fortunate than us? Why should we love our neighbor as ourself? Why should we be our brother's keeper? Why should we care about other people? Revolutionary France at the end of the 18th century, Nazi Germany, Soviet Russia, all examples of what happens when faith is rejected and reason set up as the end-all and be-all. This is why wokeness is making such strident gains in our society as we speak, and why education is being hollowed out by this ideology. Look at the 2 + 2 = 5 example again. It can be interpreted either as reason, in this case the objectivity of mathematical laws, has been rejected in order for that the faith that human will can completely remake every aspect of reality can be given free rein. Or it can be interpreted that the faith in the immutable laws of mathematics and of the natural world actually have been completely disregarded in order so that perverted woke reasoning can bulldoze through reality to the cheers of the woke crowd. Now, if you've made it this far into the video, you might be wondering how this is going to affect you. After all, you've got a good head on your shoulders like Aristotle. You know that 2 + 2 = 4 and only 4. You're not going to school, so you don't have to worry about being propagandized by college professors, and you're going to make damn sure that your kids aren't propagandized either. So what's the big deal? It's just a bunch of elitists talking gibberish to each other, right? Well, it's a little bit more than that, unfortunately. This full-out assault on knowledge brought about by the severing of faith and reason is going to affect you and your family because of what it's going to do to society. Because, not to be Johnny Raincloud again, gang, but whenever faith is separated from reason, societies dissolve. Or at the very, very least, they devolve. They lose all of the advancements that they have managed to attain. In the first place, this is just common sense. What else do we expect to happen when the logos is actually cut in half and when reality is denied? But not only that, we have seen this happen before in history, with the Islamic world providing a wonderful textbook example. Now, some people might reject the idea that there ever was such a thing as an Islamic golden age, but there does seem to be some evidence to suggest that such a golden age did at one time occur, very, very early in Islam's history. This would have been, for example, when al-Razi first identified measles and smallpox, as well as identifying for the first time that fever is actually a bodily mechanism for fighting illnesses. This is when al-Khwarizmi laid the foundation for algebra. Heck, this is when the polymath al-farabi was known as the second teacher, meaning the second greatest teacher after my hero Aristotle. But this golden age ended with the rise of the Ash'arism school in Sunni Islam. Ash'arism maintained and maintains that there is no causality in the world, a philosophical position known as occasionalism. Now that is a whole lot of words thrown at you guys all in one sentence, so let me give an example. Your finger pushing against a pen that's just laying on a table causes a pen to roll across the table. If you stopped pushing, the pen would stop rolling. There is an intimate connection, a causality, between your finger pushing against the pen and the pen rolling. Common sense, right? Right. But occasionalism disputes it. Occasionalism says that there is absolutely no connection between your finger pushing against the pen and the pen rolling across the table. The two events are not connected in any way, shape, or form. They just happen to be occurring simultaneously. Ash'arism in particular would say that the pen is only rolling across the table because Allah willed it to roll across the table at that particular moment. If Allah willed that the pen was not going to move, then you could push against that pen until doomsday and it wouldn't move an inch. Ash'arism took occasionalism and applied it to the whole world. There was absolutely no causality anywhere in the world. Nothing caused anything else to happen. Things simply happened because Allah willed them to happen. The only force that mattered in the world was the will of Allah. And just to add another wrinkle to all this, the will of Allah, it was said, was not bound by logic, reason, or anything else. To say that it was would be to say that Allah was not all-powerful, because he then had to follow rules just like lowly mortals. This literally meant that anything in the world was possible. Allah could decree that murder was immoral one day, and then next week declare it to be moral. Allah could make water wet on Wednesday and dry on Thursday. Allah could make day night today and night day tomorrow. The Islamic philosopher Ibn Hazm actually put it best when he said, "Were it God's will, we would even have to practice idolatry," which, FYI, is one of the greatest sins that a Muslim can commit. Because reason was completely rejected, the Muslim mind became closed to the real world, and all of the accomplishments, all of the triumphs, all of the discoveries, all of the knowledge made by the Golden Age was completely lost. And if we continue to cut ourselves from reality, that's probably going to be our fate too. But as always, what say you? Is wokeness ascendant because we have severed faith from reason? And does that mean that in order to defeat wokeism, we're going to have a religious revival of our own? As always, let me know your thoughts, ideas, and opinions in the comment box below. Well, that wraps up everything for right now, gang. Before you go, if you could give the video a like, share it with your friends on social media, I'd be very much obliged. And if you like the video, if you like looking at the world, politics, culture, religion from a different POV, then subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and never let a video be posted without your knowing it. As always, thank you for watching, for giving me a bit of your day. Thank you to everyone who has already subscribed to my channel. I appreciate you all. And until next time, gang, stay safe, stay free, by daring to read, think, speak, and write. I'll talk to you later. Ciao.